welcome to Friday's edition of Just Onside. It's a little bit nippy again, but I've been in France, and it's been cold there as well. But very tired. As just before the shoot, I've been explaining to us I'm really tired. I mean, it's the jet lag as well. I've not slept, and I've got a trip to London tomorrow, so it's quite a hectic life at this moment in time. But a little bit of sanity here. We'll talk about football. It's been a cracking week of football. I mean, I was in France, but I was following it, and my goodness me, there was some drama. So before we start the show, Ois, how's your week been?
It's been a good week, thank you, Ayub. Decent what you say it. I like how you say it's another nippy evening, like it's a surprise. But yeah, I mean,
it is. What do you expect in December?
yeah, even worse weather in Germany. I've been following some minus 17 degrees in around Munich and what have you. But yeah, no, it's been a good week. Football helps. Always a packed midweek program always helps. Just make it a little bit more entertaining. And yeah, another good set of fixtures coming up this weekend as well. But yeah, let's get into it. Some cracking games, cracking results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really was. I mean, I was, I didn't watch any of the games because unfortunately the hotel that I stayed at, they don't give you the option of having pay-per-view, and I didn't want to charge it to the to the business.
Unlike other excess spends that you get up to.
Yeah, so I just sort of followed it online, and absolutely brilliant. I mean, some cracking games. But before we start, let me just do the housekeeping. I usually save it till the end of the show, but let me do it now. Okay, so subscribe if you haven't. I mean, I'm not sure there's any viewers now watching who have not subscribed, but if you haven't, click the bell, the button. Okay, make sure you share with your friends, smash a like, put in a comment. I mean, there's some cracking games. There's a sacking already, so put your thoughts on. Okay, so we had games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I mean, there were some really good games, good results. Everton had a fantastic win against Newcastle. They're out of the bottom three. Amazing performance considering they've had the points deduction. Our friend George, from the high of the weekend to the low of getting beat by the Wolves. But the game we've got to focus on. My goodness me! I mean, it's Luton have. I mean, I've been sort of Luton's. I don't know, nemesis at the start of the season. I mean, I think we've made peace now, but
you've made peace. I don't know if they've accepted, but okay.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, you always sort of talk about the joys of the Premier League and the drama, the excitement. I mean, it doesn't get any more exciting than this. You, as an Arsenal fan, you must have been, I presume, at some stage quite low. But my goodness me, at the end of the game, you must have been dancing on the roof. Explain your emotions, your feelings, the game.
There is something about Arsenal, you're right, in recent times under Arteta with last-minute goals and late goals to either rescue games or win games at the very death. There is certainly a little bit of a habit forming. I think you'd agree. I think, look, I watched the game from start to finish, obviously relatively confident, but often I speak about it. In the Premier League, I think, as you can often see with results yesterday with Spurs as well, you can't take any game for granted. Each game, you have to earn the right to win the game. And Mikel Arteta spoke about it before, how he had highlighted to the players what they could expect. And I like that, to get the antennas up. No complacency whatsoever. Every single game, you've got to do the basics. And this was a very different Arsenal game away from home. Normally, they exert quite a level of control away from home. However, for the most part, they just quite couldn't keep Luton at bay. And I would give huge credit to Luton Town. It wasn't anything that I've not seen before from them, especially at home. They've clearly got a consistent way of playing. Ross Barkley arguably is playing some of his best football. I think the penny may have dropped now in terms of his ability to put consistent performances together. I really thought he had a great game. He was, for the most part, I thought, much better than even Odegaard on the pitch, although Odegaard left his imprint right at the very end. But look, I think he may well found a home there. And he's definitely bringing a lot of class and quality to that central midfield area, picking up a goal as well. But I think, look, Incredible game. It's what the Premier League's all about, right? You've got it definitely had an FA Cup third round feel to it. I mean that respectfully. It's tight ground, very tight ground. You've got the big boys coming into town, the Premier League leaders. And yeah, many will have expected Arsenal to be professional, pick up a 1-0, 2-0, and get back to London. But I think in the end, Luton Town give them huge credit. I think the challenge from an Arsenal perspective during that game, in my opinion, giving Luton Town massive credit, is some of the goals I think may well have caused some wounds, let's say, to open, which I think other teams will definitely look to exploit. You look at the first goal, any corner swinging outwards, and the guy manages to get a free header into the back of the net. That's question marks. Arsenal normally tend to be quite strong from set pieces, but that was definitely, I would say, question marks. The second goal, it's about as weak a goalkeeping as unfortunately you're going to get. One of the aspects of goalkeeping fundamentals, ultimately, Raya doesn't need me to teach him this, but is ultimately to high point the ball. When the corner's given, you're supposed to go high point it because it's a point that no other player can reach, obviously, because you've got the full use of your arms. The fact that he was backtracking to try and catch it, I mean, the player there was no foul. He just came in front of him and headed it in. So when that starts to happen, it starts to create a distinct lack of confidence in the team ahead of you. They start to think, well, we can't leave it for him. You could see Declan Rice battling with the player, but keeper's made a call for it. But I mean, that is about as poor goalkeeping as you're going to get. And as soon as goals like that start to go in, what happens in the next games? Teams are like, right, crosses, corners, play for set pieces, and let's load it right over the top of the goalkeeper and have plenty of people running in. He's got to overcome that. I mean, that third goal as well. I think by this time, the confidence is a little bit shot, to be fair. And it's another goal that you've got to save, Ayub. I mean, it's right underneath it. Barkley's done a nice step over, which he's got in his game. Yes, Ben White could get closer, but it's a shot you've got to save with your legs, with your feet, and kick it out for that squirm under him. And I sense, looking at the body language of the Arsenal defenders, that by that time they'd lost a bit of confidence in the goalkeeper. They were very much, nobody was really geeing him up. It was just a case of, right, let's get back to the centre and get this centre kick. Look, give Luton Town credit. I think there's an issue there with the goalkeeper now with Arsenal. Especially from set pieces. I expect teams to really start to look at that moving forward. And that's the problem. You know this, it's with football often, it's not just your weaknesses, it's the perception of weaknesses that teams then start to really play against. They start to play for set pieces. So I think that'll be one to keep an eye on. But give Arsenal huge credit. Yes, they were favourites to win the game. They've got the 3-3 goal straight away, but I think that's helped them. I think if it was 3-2 for another 5 or 10 minutes, I think Luton Town would have then really dug in. Substitutes come into the equation. You can sit a bit deeper. The fact is that to get that goal, pretty route one, wasn't it? You saw it lumped forward. Jesus with some great strength. Good pass, to be fair. And Havertz just started to come into a little bit of form, the kind of goals you expect him to score, right? Breaking from midfield, breaking the lines, and a tiny little finish with the ball bouncing. The fact that Arsenal had some time, I think ultimately gave them a little bit of confidence. You saw Arsenal start to pour it on a little bit. You did feel as though, not necessarily that the goal was going to come, because obviously once you're in the dying embers of the game, you feel as though a draw is going to be the result. But you just felt Arsenal were pouring it on bit by bit, getting a little tidy. Odegaard started to really take the initiative, had a strong finish to the game. It was the kind of urgency that sometimes Arsenal fans wish Arsenal had a bit more of, to some extent, moving it quicker, moving it around the sides, overlaps, overloads, all the rest of it. The goal itself, just very quickly, I mean, look, I think we all accept that this is a phenomenal player that Arsenal have bought. I think more and more, some of the aspects that we saw at West Ham is now being even embellished even further now that he's been surrounded by top talent and brilliant players. I think Arsenal work it really well. Once you work that angle to Odegaard, he puts that dip cross in, taking everybody out of the equation. And that's where you want your players with a big mentality, kind of taking initiative, taking the moment forward. He's not hanging back on the edge of the D waiting for scraps. He's getting right in amongst it. And it's a header. A little bit of fortune came off the defender as well from the header, but if you get it on target, you've always got a little bit of a chance. And then pandemonium, right? Bit harsh, I thought, for Mikel Arteta to get a yellow card, and that means he'll be on the bench. He'll be in the stands at Villa Park. I think a goal in the final moments. It's a tight pitch. There's always going to be some emotion. I mean, I'm reserved. So to be fair, I wasn't jumping up and down. I'm just I don't get like that. Obviously, huge emotion inside. But if you're the manager of a football club, I don't think he was disrespectful. It's the 97th, 98th minute. I'm not sure what he can do. I guess the rules are the rules, but I think that's a little harsh, to be honest. You've got to understand the emotion. But Arsenal got out of jail, put a little bit of pressure on some of their kind of nearest rivals for the games on Wednesday. Give Arsenal huge credit, but you don't want to keep going to the well and conceding 3 goals, especially with individual errors. I think is something to keep an eye on moving forward, especially as some of the opposition stiffens. They've got Villa, Brighton, and I think Liverpool in the next 3 that will really test their mettle, especially their defensive prowess. With a few injuries right now as well, Zinchenko's, Tomiyasu ruled out for a little while. Partey's been injured for quite some time. They are stretched. Timber's ruled out for the season, you'll remember from the start of the season. So it will be interesting to see how they navigate this next period when the games come really thick and fast. Big kudos to Arsenal, but I think Luton showed what we've seen from them a lot this season, which is that they're fighting, they're in there scrapping, they're playing for their manager, they're playing for the fans, and they'll have a chance. If they keep going like that this season, they will absolutely have a chance to survive relegation. But yeah, you need to also try and keep putting points on the board, unfortunately. So we'll see how it goes. That's how I saw it. What were your thoughts?
Very much the same. I mean, ultimately the better team did win. But I think Luton will be bitterly disappointed with the nature of the goal, because I think if there's one thing that you'd expect Luton to do is maybe sort of set plays or balls sort of from wide out, you'd expect with the big lads at the back that at least they'll be a little bit more capable of dealing with that. You'd expect Arsenal to maybe cute passes and sort of play behind the lines. Maybe that's where you'd almost sort of say, well, yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's why Arsenal are at the top of the league. But to concede a goal like that, but I talked about, we had a show early on about, is Rice worth £100 million? And I spoke to somebody and he was of the opinion that if you're paying that sort of money, it's you've got to have a player who, in defining moments, key moments, he comes up trumps. And I think this is what Declan Rice is doing now, and he's proving that he's more than worth that 105 million. He was always a great player. I mean, I just, maybe this is the element that was needed in his game, that you've got, if you're paying 100 million, you've got to be impacting games in the sense that you're defining games, rather than just maybe a very nice, cute holding midfield player, maybe making some nice passes. You've got to be a player that, a bit like Rodri, where he keeps on getting key goals, and this was just absolute. I mean, I think Rice is pretty confident, but this just maybe just sort of takes him to the next level. That he's probably thinking, yeah, I am certainly now uh, established at Arsenal, and I'm one of the main men, because I think he has to be one of the main men. I think he is a player that is born to be a leader. And I was delighted for him. I was gutted for Luton, even though, I mean, I said that they weren't going to do too well this season. I admire the fact that they just give it everything that they can. They're bereft of real quality, apart from Ross Barkley. I mean, Townsend is still. I mean, he's a former England international, so he knows the game. But it's the work that they put in as well, and they all just give it everything. They leave nothing behind. And you're absolutely right. I think it's always dangerous. As soon as you score, the next 5 minutes should be absolute when you're on it. And I think that the fact that it conceded so quickly, it just gave the impetus back to the Arsenal. So cracking game, wonderful game. As a neutral, it's just brilliant to watch, and I'm absolutely hoping that Luton do escape, because I think, for all the things that I've said at the start of the season, I really think they're a breath of fresh air. They're a team that's not really invested heavily, but what they do and what they give is just something that really, as a football connoisseur, that's all you expect from a team, that you give it everything. If you give it everything, the result is obviously, it's not unimportant, but you can't, as a fan, ever criticise your team. And I think the Luton fans will just be in seventh heaven at this moment. I mean, they'll be gutted, but they'll also be absolutely proud of the team, the manager. So wonderful game, but Arsenal just keep finding a way of getting results, as they did for large parts last season.
I don't know if that's your book of apologies there, are you on the shelf behind you, but you've racked up a fair few this season. I mean, Gary O'Neill, Luton Town, just to name a few. I wonder whether or not your skepticism about Declan Rice. I mean, maybe. I mean, you could go ahead. You've got the time to
All I would sort of
apologise.
say is, Bournemouth's doing incredibly well now.
That doesn't make it the right decision.
But maybe
Can we stay on track here?
right. Okay, so that's the Arsenal, and they're top of the table. I mean, and maybe deservedly so. A team that's faltering at the moment. I mean, it's a team that we wax lyrical. I mean, for the last 10 years or maybe longer, whenever there's talk of Man City, it's a wonderful team. It's a team that's going to win the league. Pep is one of the greatest managers ever, but they've had a real wobble. And again, it was interesting to note that I don't think Rodri played, and it seems to be when Rodri doesn't play, it seems to be a key piece in a jigsaw, and if that piece is missing, they seem to struggle. So this is, I'm not sure, what is it, 4 games without a win now? Is it for Man City, or have I got that wrong?
Well, they obviously drew against Spurs, drew against Liverpool. I think they must have won the game just before that, I believe. But yeah, that's definitely 3 on the bounce.
So I mean, it will be a fool to sort of say the wheels are coming off at this stage. But I do think that Pep will be worried, or do you think it's a small blip? He's got the players, or do you really reckon that it is time for some concern? Because ultimately, it's about winning the league. That's the standard that Man City have set. So it's not about finishing third, finishing fourth. It's about finishing first. So they're what is it, 6 points behind Man City? So
Arsenal, yeah.
Arsenal. So what's your thoughts?
You asked the question, is it time to be worried? I always find this kind of question interesting because it's as though Man City in previous years, when they've started a little bit slowly, I say started, I mean, they started fine this season. It's a little wobble right now by their extremely high standards, right? But I always find it interesting because it suggests as though that in previous years, when they've had relatively slow starts or another team's had an incredibly fast start, that it's somehow intentional, as though they're keeping a little bit in the gas tank. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think sometimes once the mind focuses and games get very real down the stretch where it's televised games, huge pressures, teams playing first as opposed to teams playing second, and that different dynamic. I think Man City, with their coach, with their experience, with their talent, and with their squad, they've been able to rise time and time again and come to the fore, right? Now, in terms of worry, I don't think they'd be worried. I checked the bookies odds this morning. They're still the favourites to win the Premier League title, and I think that's a moniker that's well deserved. What I would say, though, is that I don't think, and I always say this, I don't think you could keep going to the well time and time again and just give what I would say are good teams, decent teams, thoroughly good teams, this kind of advantage time and time again. Now, looking at their fixtures, I believe that actually the gap will close before it gets wider. I just expect them to come to the fore a lot more over the next 6 to 10 games. Kevin De Bruyne is back very soon, and you're absolutely right to mention Rodri. That yellow card that he got against Spurs ruling him out. I thought it at the time that it's Villa. If you remember, Grealish also got a yellow card, which meant he was ruled out against playing against his former team. And I just remember thinking at the time, so that's Rodri out, Grealish out. And if you remember, Doku came off with an injury and he missed the Villa game. So I knew straight away there was going to be some drop off from an offensive output. And that's exactly what you saw. And I think, look, I think the bigger story to some extent, and I will come on to Villa in a moment, but I do think Villa are the story here somewhat. I think just from a City perspective, Ayub, again, not. I just think it's one of those situations where you've got to be very careful, right? 6 points, if you don't arrest the slide. I mean, they've got Luton Town, I think, soon. I don't know if that's this week. I think it might be this weekend. And I expect them to start putting points back on the table, and they'll be fine. They've been here, done that. But I just think for whatever reason, if that 6 points was to become 8 points, don't forget there's another team in the mix this year. Last year, it felt from a very early stage. I say very, but it seemed like it was going to be between Arsenal and Man City. You've got City in the Liverpool in the mix. You've got Aston Villa in the mix, because the points are what the points are. It's very well saying Villa won't be in the mix come the end because nobody expected them to be here. But if you look at Unai Emery's record at Aston Villa since he came, it's comparable, absolutely comparable with all of the big boys. And again, I'll come on to them shortly. From a City perspective, look, there's definitely been a drop off. You saw that against Spurs. Second half, Spurs were, in some ways, they're equal, and very much City, from their perspective, normally are dominant at home. And I'm talking from 0 minutes to 98 minutes. It's just dominance, all out dominance. Now teams all of a sudden are getting behind them. You look at some of the goals they've conceded. We spoke about it. Are you right that they look a little bit more vulnerable at the back? And again, similar to how Man United were fortunate to concede 1 against Newcastle, I thought City were very fortunate just to concede 1 against Aston Villa. So that would be the issue for me. It's not so much the points, not so much the games. It's the fact that all of a sudden when you watch the game, they look a little bit more vulnerable than they have. And again, similar to what we spoke about with Raya, it's the perception of weakness. Now, what this will do is it'll give teams confidence that we can go to the Etihad, stay in the game, we can get them on the counter. Even at home, we can even perhaps dominate the game like Aston Villa did. It's very rare that Man City play a game and you say the other team thoroughly deserve the win. That very rarely happens. Teams beat them from time to time, but it's very rare. I just want to quickly talk about Aston Villa, because again, I think that's very much the story here. Incredible performance, absolutely dominant. Guardiola admitted as much. I think it's only happened 19 times in the 281 Premier League games that Guardiola's been in charge of Man City, that teams had more shots than Man City. But they had 20 more shots than Man City in this game. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. A lot of those other games have been against Arsenal, Liverpool, and the other kind of historical rivals, as you'd expect. But Aston Villa were thoroughly deserving. It's obviously Unai Emery's first win in a head-to-head match against Pep Guardiola. They are an incredible outfit. They're coming on strong. They've got a top-class striker. They've got a midfield that's functioning incredibly well. With McGinn, Kamara, and Douglas Luiz. So look, they've got a functioning team. They've got a good squad. Torres playing incredibly well at the back. They've got a settled team. Goalkeepers really coming to the fore with big saves. A double save from Haaland, although the second one may well have been just offside if it had counted or if it had gone into the back of the net. But Aston Villa are absolutely purring. From a City perspective, yes. Again, I expect their fixtures and I expect their performances to start turning very soon. The return of Rodri, KDB will soon sort that out. But it does mean that not only do they have to turn around the 6 points, I mean, Arsenal's fixture list stiffens, I should say. So I do expect it to get bunched very soon, very quickly. But I just think with Arsenal hoping to be there all the way till the end, Liverpool hoping to be there, Aston Villa, let's see, and there's still some other teams sniffing. United have picked up 1 or 2 positive results. So I think, let's see, it'll be, from a City perspective, worry. I think it's more the performance. The fact that they lost is one thing. The fact that a team thoroughly outplayed them would be the big concern. So I think, yeah, I wouldn't say panic, but early signs that there may well be perhaps a different winner of the Premier League title this season, other than the norm of Man City, who've won 4 in 5.
I think this is further evidence. I mean, to get this right, it's not a criticism, but I think Guardiola is overrated. I've always felt he's overrated. I think if you have good players, and again, but this is where we have to be honest, because I think he's missing KDB. Gundogan obviously has moved on. Rodri was missing this game, and this is where really the coaches have to come to the fore, because it's very easy if you've got a luxury of quality players playing, because in a sense they take care of the performance. When they're not playing, this is where really I expect Guardiola to show me right how good a coach he is, because he's got to modify. He doesn't have the gun players, and he's been found wanting. I mean, I sort of mentioned, I'm not a stats man, but I think I read that Rodri's missed, I think 4 games, 5 games, or whatever games he's missed. City have not won those games. Now, that to me is quite damning on Guardiola. That it's when he's missing a key cog, he's incapable of putting a team out there, having a strategy, having tactics which compensate for the loss of a key man. Because if you're then saying, well, look, Rodri's such a big player, then really maybe that's strengthening my argument, saying that Guardiola isn't that great a coach, but he's okay when he's got great players playing for him. So I still maintain that he's a great coach of great players, but as soon as the team is weakened without key players, I am doubting whether he has the ability to compensate for the loss of those key men. You're
I,
obviously, yeah, I see the look in your face, and
come
you're
on, are
not
you?
impressed.
I mean, listen, you're entitled to your view, but I mean, this comes back to that argument about Guardiola. Obviously, he's the world's best coach, and therefore he's going to get the world's best gigs. That happens in any industry, and therefore you're probably going to have the best talent pool available to you. I don't have any qualms with that. Look, I know what you're saying about Rodri, though. Clearly, I mean, if you remember early on this season when he missed his 3 games because of that red card against Nottingham Forest, they lost all 3 games, including the Carabao Cup game, I think it was, against Newcastle. They obviously lost against Arsenal and they lost against Wolves. Again, yellow card, 5 bookings. He misses this game and they lose. And it's not just lose, it's the manner of the loss, right? They were thoroughly outplayed. I guess the question mark you could ask is, are some of the players in that position in terms of support and in terms of cover adequate? Whether it's Rico Lewis, we know Calvin Phillips is not well favoured. You fully expect him to move on in January if he's got a chance to hold on to his squad or his position in the Euro 2024 squad, but clearly he doesn't trust him. I mean, that's pretty obvious. And whether it's Kovacic, Nunes, whatever, he doesn't quite have the skill set of what Rodri has. Now, look, that's the same for all top players. If Declan Rice is missing for a period of time for Arsenal, especially with Partey out, Arsenal are going to drop off. Honestly, they would really drop off in terms of the physicality and strength that Declan Rice offers. So I think the big players are always going to leave some hole. And I think Guardiola, look, to be fair, he has shown that when players are not there, the top players are not there, he still finds a way. But that's often because he's got some incredible squad depth. I think it's a bit harsh to label that at him. I think what I would say about this game is, yeah, Unai Emery thoroughly outthought and outfought Guardiola in terms of the tactics, right? I mean, they won possession in the final third of the pitch, 9 times in the first half alone. That's Villa. No team's ever done that. No team has done that this Premier League season, even in a full game. So over the course of the game, 13 times Villa won possession in the final third. In the entire Pep Guardiola era at Man City, that's never happened. I mean, they were just all over City. And I think, give Emery credit, he saw that they were a bit vulnerable and he didn't then kind of sit back. He found a tactic, he found a strategy, especially with Bailey and Watkins, incredible pace up front, to find a way to play. And I think the introduction of Tielemans into that team right now as well is functioning really well. Guardiola, I think you're being a bit harsh there. He's won the lot. He's won it with top players. Yes, when Rodri's missing, I agree. That team is not the same team, but then he's arguably the best in his position in the world at what he does. So, I mean, if they're missing Haaland, there's going to be some drop-off at you. So I'm not sure what you're asking from Guardiola here.
It's simple. I mean, it's what Unai Emery has done. Because if you look at the players, I mean, they're good players. I mean, they're Premier League players, so there is no question that these are good players. But the transformation when he took over from Stevie G straight away reflected the ability of Unai Emery. I mean, he's a coach with a great pedigree. Now, his time at Arsenal was, I mean, obviously you as an Arsenal fan, you're fully aware that it just never quite clicked. It never worked. It just seemed to be maybe the right man, but just at the wrong club at that time. But he's showing exceptional tactical nous. He's bringing the best out of players. And as I said, these are good players. You don't play in the Premier League if you're not a good player, but he's getting players to perform at the optimum level. He finds a way, and it's obviously, I mean, you don't want to say they're title contenders, but they're in the mix. They're in the mix. I mean, nobody would have thought at the start of the season they were going to be in the mix.
I was just going to say on that, Ayub, the reason why I think you've got to give them the credit, and to your point about being in the title mix, I mean, look, they'll have to prove it, right, over time and time again. The difference between them and, let's say, Manchester United is that Manchester United have shown a lot more frequently, a lot more consistently this season of performing ineptly. I mean, they won the other day against Chelsea. We can get into that if you wish. But it's more when you see a team, this is the eye test we talk about, where Villa, they've won, what is it, 14 games in a row at home or whatever it is. And they've played some stiff opposition. I think the last time they lost at home was the Arsenal game last season, if you remember the famous 4-2 game. So, look, I'm with you. They're in the mix because ultimately points is the only currency that matters here. And they've got another huge test on Saturday night, as do Arsenal when they travel to Villa Park. That'll be another big litmus test. And if they can come through that Villa, then absolutely the whole league will be taking notice, because that would be back-to-back wins against the two best teams from last season anyway. So I think Emery, what he's doing at Aston Villa is definitely coach of the year right now. Especially, I mean, look, this offside trap that they played in terms of catching teams out, they caught Man City offside 5 times. It's the 9th team that they've caught offside 5 times or more in a game. The next best team in that table is they've only caught them out twice, if that makes sense. So Fulham have caught 2 teams out 5 times or more in terms of offside. Villa have done it 9 times this season, leading by a million miles. It's smart. It's pressing from the front. The back 4 know what they're doing in terms of. I think every now and again they will still get caught. You remember early on this season, the first game, I think it was, they got absolutely hammered by Newcastle, and I think that was maybe just some of them had a nice summer holiday. Let's just put it down to that. But it shows, to your point, in terms of that tactics, work on the training ground, it's really working, and teams are not quite working out how best to navigate that. Now, high offside traps are not necessarily something novel, but clearly it's functioning, it's working. The whole team's buying into the tactics, buying into the strategy, and Unai Emery deserves huge credit. The tests come thick and fast for them. And it'll be interesting to see how they fare. From a City perspective, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be there right at the end, as you'd expect. But again, I don't think it's voluntary that they keep affording teams a little bit of a head start. It's not the way to go about trying to win titles. I think it takes a lot. It's taking Herculean runs come post-February. I'm talking like 10, 12 wins in a row. And I don't think that's sometimes easy, because you can be handed a bit of bad luck, a red card, a penalty. A lot of things can go against you. So they won't want that gap to widen beyond 6. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely. You touched upon the Man United game, and we've got a number of Man United fans who tune into our show. So what the hell is going on? It just, as a Man United fan, if I was, I'd be absolutely, if I had hair, I'd be tearing it out. It just, you can't, I have no idea what is happening with this football club. I mean, it's a really good result again. I mean, Chelsea it's hit and miss with Chelsea at this moment in time. But again, it's another win for Manchester United. I mean, they'll lose a game. They'll play really poorly. They'll play poorly and win a game. So what's your? I mean, what do you think? I mean, this season. I mean, what's the expectations? What are United fans expecting this season from United? Because I mean, at the moment, I mean, it's confusing as to what to expect. You think that they've turned a corner, but they haven't, and then they produce a decent result and then lose again. What It seems to be a club which is just in flux at this moment. It's going nowhere.
Yeah, just very quickly, Ayub. I mean, we said after the game, we did the analysis after the Newcastle game, didn't we, Ayub? And I said I would be amazed if Marcus Rashford isn't on the bench over the next couple of games. First game available, he's on the bench. I expect him to be on the bench a little bit more. I watched the whole game, pretty much start to finish. I was flicking a little bit between the Liverpool-Sheffield United game. Luckily, the kickoff times were staggered a little, so it did help. But yeah, Manchester United. Look, I watched that game, and I want to be very careful with my words. Those were 2 teams, Manchester United and Chelsea, that were, in my opinion, I mean, I don't know how best to put this in the most respectful way possible, but it felt to me as though they were 2 non-serious teams, if I can say that. And what I mean by that, it was as though you go forward, we go forward. Let's see. Chelsea had loads of opportunities. And what I mean opportunities, what I mean is like these 3-on-2s, 2-on-2s, 4-on-2s. They had a great situation early on with Mudryk. He didn't find the pass. Sterling 2-on-1 against the keeper. Doesn't quite pass it to Jackson at the right time. I mean, there were 2 teams that were as though they didn't have anything truly to play for. Because when you have something to play for, I'm talking about top honours, there's a certain pressure. There's a certain emotion in the game where, you know, teams dig in because there's so much at stake, if that makes sense. Whereas if it's a bit of a dead rubber, you're like, come on then, let's just have a game of football. And that's what it felt like to me. Two teams that have had incredible times in the past, but right now are still struggling to find themselves in terms of identity. And look, ultimately, Man United, I thought, were deserving of the win on the day. Absolutely. They had more shots. Chelsea had some great moments, like I said. But Chelsea right now are also looking to kind of find themselves. There'll be a win, there'll be a loss. There'll be a win. They're a pretty average team below Manchester United. Manchester United have a goal difference of 0, scored 18, conceded 18. I think Manchester United, in my humble opinion, are still a distinctly average team. And I only base that off my eye test in terms of what I see. If they were putting a high premium on teams conceding, creating chances against them, if they were creating their own opportunities, you know, in terms of plentiful, then I'd be like, you know, there's something there. But right now, they still conceded just as many chances. That game could have been anything. And I mean that. Yes, in the end, I thought United were deserving because they had more opportunities. And I thought they stumbled on a little formula there where they at least looked a little bit more vibrant. I think Fernandez, Garnacho, even Anthony coming off the right quite often and playing centrally at times as well. I thought the penalty was a bit of a nonsense. I know he was saved, but I don't get it. I mean, if you're telling me that's not re-refereeing that incident, what is? Because it's often used the whole clear and obvious to hide behind, but it's not clear and obvious, so they won't overrule it. It was clearly overruled. I mean, has Fernandez stepped on him? Yes, but it stepped on him and then slid off the top of his foot. If you're gonna give pennies for that, honestly, but yeah, United deserving of the win. In the end, these are two clubs. What's the height of their ambition? That's how you propose the question, Ayub. I'd be amazed if either of them genuinely, with the current performance levels, got top four. And in the end, what is top four? I keep saying Manchester United, there's a chance that in a week's time they'll be out of the Champions League. There's a good chance. And I'm not saying they will, but it looks likely more than unlikely. So what are you playing for? The opportunity to play 6 more games in the Champions League. We've got to get away from this as supporters. If you're a big team, you've got to, I keep saying you must be challenging for the Premier League title. You don't have a divine right to win it, but you must be challenging. And Manchester United right now are in this perpetual cycle of winning a game, losing a game. They've won 9, lost 6. They've not drawn a game, which has probably helped their league position because they've probably deserved to draw a few games, especially ones they've turned around. But can you really put a lot of stock and good value in terms of some of their wins? Again, offensively, they were decent, but still gaps at the back. A lot of last-ditch defending. It's not, again, I don't think it's a recipe for long-term success and sustainable success. So winning the title, challenging for the title, they'd have to improve hugely. Yes, Arsenal have got a difficult game, or United will think they've got a winnable game against a resurgent Bournemouth. But even still, I go off my eyes, and my eyes tell me that that's not a team still well knitted together, putting a high premium on other teams conceding a chance, digging in, defending well. It was two teams just having a game of football, and Manchester United came on top.
I think these are two teams that need to identify how they go forward, because I think they need to work out what identity they're going to have, because at the moment they just seem to be playing games rather than just the manager saying, right, this is what I want to try and achieve and accomplish. So at least the fans can see that there is, we used to always talk about the Arsenal and trust the process. So there seems to be absolutely no process. It just seems to be that they play a game, and it's almost it's a lottery. We'll either win, we'll lose. We're not sure how we'll play. At least when Arteta was working with the Arsenal, there seemed to be. I mean, we joked about it. I mean, we obviously have. As we used to always say, trust the process, trust the process. But at least there was a process, and you could identify that he was working towards a much more larger goal. These two clubs at the moment is just, I mean, I'd be absolutely irate. These are big clubs. These aren't small clubs. These are big, massive clubs who have invested heavily. And I think their fans deserve a lot more than what they're getting at this moment in time. At least if there was something that they could identify as being a plan that is in place, or at least they're working towards, it would at least perhaps as a fan say, well, look, at least let's sort of go through this season. Hopefully by the end of the season we'll be in a better position. But at the moment it's two clubs that they're just going absolutely nowhere. Or at least that's my thought.
Yeah, and I think special mention to Scott McTominay, right? He's had a good season this season, and if it wasn't for him, it would have been all manner of trouble. And obviously, he was somebody that they were looking to shift. I could never understand that, just simply because I always felt as a utility player, especially given his age, I thought he's a good utility player. You might say he's not good enough for this, and this idea of him not being good enough for Manchester United Football Club. But what is good enough for Manchester United Football Club? Ultimately, if you've got a player who's willing to run, willing to commit, gives you plenty, pops up in the final third. I mean, he's had a bit of a positional shift. He's arguably their best attacker. I think he's got the most goals for them this season. But again, he's got a bit about him, and he's obviously done well for Scotland as well. So he's having his best season so far. May have stumbled on again a winning formula with regards to his position, but again a player he was looking to get rid of, Eric Ten Hag, as was Maguire, and Maguire's had a pretty decent season as well, as he's forged his way back into the team. I mean, the only other comment I want to make is, and this is one of the reasons why when I watch other games, I always think, oh, well, when you're watching the Man City game or the Liverpool game, you're hoping they drop results. Honestly, early on, I just want my team to play well and get points, because the rest just often takes care of itself. If you take care of business, the others will drop points, right? At some point, it just automatically, that's the Premier League. And I just think we have to also get away from this idea that, and United, because they haven't drawn a game, this idea that, oh, look at us, we've had a shocking season and we're level on points with Spurs, or we're only 3 points behind Man City. But that's the whole point. City have had a wobble as well. I think we've got to get away from this kind of tribalism and this kind of easy wins and winning arguments about, oh, we're only 3 points here, we're only 2 points there. Again, I get back to it. If you're a big club, you have an expectation not to kind of depress your ambition. You should be challenging for the Premier League title. Arsenal had many years under Arsene Wenger at the end, and even afterwards, of just being in the abyss. And you take it, you swallow it, and you just hope something happens. Good appointment, good direction, good leadership at the club, that suddenly your club can start to form some sort of challenge. That's why when I often speak about Arsenal, I don't always think, oh, I want to win the title, I want to win the title. Yes, just to be in the mix is a big win from where they were, which was absolutely in the doldrums, 8th, 5th, 8th. I mean, who cares? As a big club, you've got to be aspiring to be a lot more. Manchester United right now, they've got a long, long way to go. Chelsea have an even further way to go, I would argue. I did bump into your lad this afternoon, and he did say to me, or he muttered under his breath, that if you say the word patience to me one more time, so I made a swift exit. I didn't want to bother him anymore, but no, look, they've got a long way to go, and they're a club that's a bit trigger happy. So I think the manager just needs to be careful as well.
Absolutely, you're right. I mean, that's there's just quickly, one more game that I want to just talk about before we sort of wrap up the show. It was Tottenham versus West Ham. I mean, I was following the game, and this is now, I think, 5 games. The last 5 games, Tottenham have lost 4, drawn 1, and the draw game was against Man City. Of all the teams that would have expected to lose, that probably would have been it. And it's obviously, I'm not going to say Ange is under pressure, but it's.
I hope you weren't going to say that.
Yeah. But you've got to. I mean, I think at least this is where, I mean, this is the point I was trying to make. Now, the last 5 games, I think, in terms of Chelsea, in terms of Man United, in terms of Tottenham, I think Tottenham have got the least amount of points in the last 5 games. But if I was a Spurs fan, I'd probably be the happiest, because at least you know with Ange what the system is, what the philosophy is. And ultimately, you do know that when the players come back, that it's a system that will work. There is an identity. So as a fan, it's much more easier to be on board with that. But it's one where, do you just say, well, it's fine, he's playing, as we're playing good football, or as a fan, do you worry? As a coach, does he think, well, hang on, I'm going to have to try and arrest this slide, or is it just Ange's this year is completely untouchable?
Oh, absolutely, he's untouchable. I think that goes without saying, in my opinion. I watched the game yesterday, and again, it helps that you had these staggered games across Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So this is another game that I watched all of. Honestly, because you had the choice between 2 games, right? It was Everton Newcastle at 7:30. They picked up a huge win as well for them. But then at 8:15, you had Spurs against West Ham. To answer your question, look, I watched the whole game. What I see with Spurs, especially in this recent run of games where they've been televised a fair bit as well, is, yeah, they've had a few injury suspensions. We know the story in terms of them not having their best team available, but they didn't have their best team available at Etihad against arguably the best team in the world, and they acquitted themselves, I thought, fairly well. Yes, first half they were fortunate, but second half they definitely looked a lot more cohesive, let's say, and competitive, and deservedly, but got a point for themselves in the end. I think yesterday what I noticed was they started like an absolute house on fire. Scored from a set piece, great header from Romero, but West Ham would be disappointed with that. But they probably were deserving of the goal, to be fair, in terms of their open play. What I have seen with Spurs, and I think what's really interesting, I saw it for the first time yesterday, I felt, was where in the first half, they commit to the kind of lots of bodies in the final third, but it's lots of little quick short passes. So it's like pop, 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 pop. And it's just, it creates this kind of knock-on effect and this kind of chaotic nature of kind of playing with speed and passes into tight areas, bang, bang, one touch. It's fast, it's quick, it's designed to kind of get the other team out of kilter. And West Ham were absolutely on the ropes. They could not get out. Zuma could have scored an own goal. But what I think happened yesterday, at least watching the game, West Ham were a lot better in the second half. And I just wonder whether or not that kind of high octane, high pace that the team's playing is just over the course of the 90, just showing itself, just where they start flagging a little bit. West Ham definitely came on strong. And you got to remember, West Ham, as much as defending that they did for the first half an hour, I mean, they couldn't really get out. But you're not doing much running. Yes, mentally it's hard because you're not really having to, but it's not physically that taxing because you're not really running out that much, as opposed to kind of creating this. So as the second half wore on, West Ham suddenly start to get into the game a little bit more. Obviously, a bit of ricochet for the first goal, but Bowen takes it well. And then the second goal, it's a bit of a calamity, isn't it, Ayub? I mean, kind of a slightly short pass. Could the keeper have done a little bit better? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe a little bit braver, gather everything. And then Ward-Prowse does the business off the rebound of the post. I just wonder, like I said, just this kind of high-octane nature, whether or not that's just going to lead to a little bit of flagging as the games wear on, but also this kind of frequency of games, not being able to rotate the squad as much. You saw that again, perhaps with Newcastle yesterday, really running on empty in terms of following the game. Happened to them against Bournemouth, you'll remember as well. So it's just, I think the managers, Newcastle and Spurs, I think you'd agree, are two very similar stylistic teams in terms of front foot, running, quick, sharp, be fast to the ball, be pressing the ball, really wanting to force the action. I just wonder when games are coming thick and fast and the squad's a little bit stretched on both teams, whether or not as the game's wearing on, you're suddenly starting to feel it. Yesterday, I was reading the Everton report for Newcastle, and they were saying Livramento was out on his feet right at the end. Again, young player having to play a number of games. Trippier with the multiple mistakes. You wouldn't expect that from him, an experienced professional. So with Spurs, I don't have him under any pressure whatsoever, none whatsoever. I think he is the right man, and I think he's just, what he's doing, he's finding out a little bit about what his players are capable of, what they're not capable of, even more important, and I think they'll be fine. I don't think there's anything to be worried about. Again, I had them finishing sixth. I've not seen anything to suggest otherwise, but yeah, in terms of pressure, absolutely not. I hope you're not going to suggest the same as well, are you?
No, but the only thing I would say is, and I'm going to hark back onto Bielsa, because he was another manager. I mean, we've talked about this before, so it's not. I'm not saying anything which is.
Bielsa was getting pumped every week. There's a difference.
There's a reason why. I mean, because his was, there was only plan A. I mean, and it's a famous quote now when people say, well, if plan A isn't working, he says we just try harder at plan A. And his was the same because there was an intensity. And there is a shelf life, especially when you start having injuries and the squad isn't great, and then when you start having games. I mean, you talked about the energy levels, and this was an unusual situation because usually in the Premier League, you don't have a weekend game and a midweek game. If there is, obviously there's cup games, but it's maybe that was one of the reasons why they've played in the against it was the Man City, wasn't it? It was the Man City game that they'd played. So and that was, I mean, that inevitably is not just physical, but I think it's mental as well, because there's so much that you invest in that game. But what Bielsa did and what I think Ange is doing is just it's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You've got to be adaptable, and I think you've got to factor in. I mean, they have new scientists, sports scientists. I'm sure they have the red zones. So he must be aware that there are certain players perhaps quite close to empty. So surely he must be, either he has to rotate the squad or maybe tinker with the way that he's playing. Maybe just sort of say, well, look, we're not just going to go gung ho. We're just going to take it a little bit easy, catch your breath.
Yeah, but I think there's two things here. One, I mean, there was a little bit of a refresh to the team yesterday, but with Romero coming back in, obviously Richarlison comes off the bench and misses arguably a sitter, really. To be honest with you, he's got to do much better. I think the thing about the red zone is all very well at you, but I think there's a greater goal in mind here. What he's trying to do is energize the club, the fans. And yes, you might say, well, defeats isn't going to do that. You say that, but I think the fans, Spurs, the last couple of managers, there was again, I keep saying there was a huge disconnect between the fans, the product on the pitch, the ownership. You don't hear anything about Daniel Levy anymore. And I think that's all down to Ange kind of becoming the most important person at the football club. The fans really getting behind it, being quite entertained into the football being played. Do you want to lose every week? Are you absolutely not? Of course not. And they're in a little bit of a tricky run. But honestly, they started really well that game. They played in some good stuff, good to watch. I just think over time, with a bit of experience, with a bit of game experience, suddenly those losses will turn into draws into wins. And I think what he's trying to do within the squad, and I'm all for it. What he's trying to do within the squad, I think, is to say, look, this is how we play. I agree. You don't want to be too kind of stubborn with that. I think he thinks that that's better coming through when the style matures a little bit more, and he's got his message across to the players. I think right now what he's saying is, "I'll take the lumps if that means just me kind of belligerently getting my message across that we play. No matter what happens, we play. We're brave on the football, etc." I think once they suddenly start to have expectations heaped on them, and right now there's no expectation on Spurs whatsoever. I think hopefully when they start, what I say often, dining at that top table again, I think that's when he'll suddenly start to think about match experience and game experience and certain substitution patterns and rotation and what have you. They've got a great opportunity, I think, this season to finish fourth. They've not got European football, so I think that would be a great opportunity for them. But yeah, in terms of Ange, I think he's just trying to energize the squad, energize the club, the fans, and what have you. And I think he's done a great job so far. Little wobble, but I think they'll be hoping to arrest that soon enough.
That he has, and there's a cracking game at the weekend. They're playing, I think, Tottenham on Sunday, so that's a nice juicy fixture.
Newcastle,
Oh,
Spurs, yeah.
Newcastle, yeah. That's a juicy fixture. So, oh, and on that note,
Well,
I
I'd
think,
like to get
yeah.
some quick predictions in, Ayub, if you don't mind. Can we have a quick predictions round? Because I think let's.
Yeah, why not?
We've not done a preview this week, and that's fine because we've had a weekday review. But let me throw some games at you, and let's go through it. And let's go through our predictions after the weekend ends as to how many you got wrong, or should we say how many you got wrong? it might be easier to count how many you got right.
Yeah. I'm sort of thinking that if I get one right, I'll be absolutely delighted. So
let me throw some games at you. Palace Liverpool kicks off the weekend with another 12:30 game for Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp not taking too kindly to the Amazon Prime presenter. With the kickoff time. But Palace against Liverpool, I think if Liverpool win that, they go top of the table. So what's your prediction for that game? Are you Palace in a bit of trouble at the moment?
Yeah, they are. They're struggling. I've got a feeling that Roy, he's probably not going to last the season. So I'm not going to say it's a comfortable win. I think Liverpool are just making things a little bit more difficult than they should be. But Liverpool will win. I think they'll win by a couple of goals, but it's not going to be easy. I mean, but that's only because I think Crystal Palace. I mean, to be honest, really, I don't think they're really competing at the moment. So Liverpool win for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 2-0 Liverpool. So I think you're pretty much on the same lines. Let's run through some of these quickly. Brighton, Burnley. Are you?
Just for George's sake, Burnley win. I don't care what what scoreline, as long as they win. Just for George's sake.
I'm gonna go for Brighton to win 2-1. Manchester United home to Bournemouth.
It could be Bournemouth. Bournemouth are playing really well at the moment, so I'm putting Bournemouth as winning that one.
I think United will just come through. I think it might be a bit of a humdinger, so I'm going to go for 3-2 home win for United faithful. Sheffield United, Brentford quickly.
It will be a Brentford win, not by many. I think Chris Wilder is just going to tighten things up, but they just haven't got the players, so Brentford win.
I'm going to go for a score draw, 1-1. Sheffield United, I mean, they competed okay against Liverpool on another day. Could have got slightly different result. Liverpool were dominant, but they competed okay. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, Wilder, to get them a point. Wolves against Forest, I'm going to go quickly for a home win. Forest, huge pressure. Steve Cooper. And Ayub, you may not remember this, but when Lopetegui got the sack, I suggested to you that I could see him ending up at Forest with Steve Cooper starting the season under pressure. So if that happens, that'll come round full circle. But yeah, I fancy Wolves to sneak that. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Wolves.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, the big one, Saturday night, Saturday late afternoon, I should say. Villa off a huge win against Man City, home against the title leading or league topping Arsenal. What do you reckon? Be careful here.
It's a draw. I reckon it's going to be a draw because that's two teams playing at the top of their game. So if there's a winner, it's got to be Aston Villa. I just think that they're playing so well. They've got so much confidence. Unai Emery, he's got a point to prove. He'll be smarting after what happened with the Arsenal. So I think he'll want to show Arsenal what they're missing. So draw, but if there's a winner, it's going to be Aston Villa.
I'll take a draw. I'm going to sit on the fence with that one, but I'll take a draw right now and move on swiftly. I'm hoping a draw. Everton, Chelsea, I'm going to go for 1-1. Go on, Nick. What do you think?
Everton win. Everton win.
Well, that'd be that'd be a resurgent Everton then, already out of the relegation zone, I believe, right? Even after that 10-point deduction. Fulham against West Ham, tricky one. I'm going to go for a score draw. Fulham. Yeah, I'm going to go for a score draw. I'm going to go 1-1.
I'm going to join you on that. I'm not sure about whether it's going to be 1-1, but it will be a draw.
Right, be careful with this. So you remember you've started to make some friends now with Luton Town fans. Luton home to the champions.
I fear they're going to get walloped. I do. There's one game that City are going to absolutely tonk somebody, and I think this is the game. I think Haaland. I've just got a feeling that after what's been happening, even Guardiola's going to be really worked up, and he's going to. I don't know about Guardiola, but Haaland. I think he's just frustrated. He's frustrated after what happened against Tottenham. He's frustrated that he's having opportunities, but he's not quite putting the ball in the back of the net. This is maybe his opportunity. So I reckon it's a spanking. Man City will win about 5-0.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4-0. I think they will bounce back with a vengeance. And then the final game of the weekend, very quickly, Spurs, you mentioned it, home to Newcastle. Probably both teams needing a win, to be honest with you. How do you see that game faring?
I've got a feeling that Newcastle will shade it. So it will continue this this sort of struggling run that Tottenham are having, and then probably we could have Moggy to come on the show later.
If we can get a hold of him. I saw him earlier today as well, and he gave me a wide berth. So look, I mean, Spurs Newcastle. I'm going to go for a highly entertaining score draw. So I'm going to go for a Desmond. I think it'll be 2-2. So we shall see how that goes. But that rounds up the games. Ayub, so I'll let you round us off.
Excellent, good stuff. So until the next time, thank you as always for joining. Offer your comments to some of the points that we've made. My comments about Guardiola being overrated. I'm not sure how many City fans watch this show, but if you are, pop down your thoughts on what you think. Man United fans, what's your thoughts? How's the season going? Liverpool fans, do you think you'll win the league? Because I think you will. So anything that you want to put it down. We'll read them. We'll comment back if there's something obviously we need to sort of say about. But as always, thank you for joining and watching. And until the next time, stay warm.